Hi everybody! So in this video I'm going to be talking about supply and demand and how that connects back to stuff that is happening in the real world right now. So first I'm going to talk about what supply and demand is, and then we'll do some connections. So supply is the amount of something or the amount of goods and services that are available to consumers. And we are consumers which means we are someone who goes out and buys goods or services. So supply is how much, too little, too much, a lot, not enough of goods or services that are available for us to buy. Demand is how much consumers want something. So how much do we, as people that purchase things, how much do we want something? So this is good to connect it to what's happening right now in our world with COVID-19, because right now the supply of things like toilet paper, just so many things, that the supply is so low because everybody goes out and buys it all. So the demand is really high for toilet paper right now because there's not a lot of it available on the shelves, so people really want it and need it, so the demand is high. So now I'm going to talk about, like, if supply is high, what does that mean for demand? If supply is low, what does that mean for demand? And I'm going to do it on the whiteboard so we can look at it over here. Alright, so I have drawn this up on the whiteboard. It says supply is high with an arrow pointing up for high, which leads to demand is, what do you think it would be? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Supply is high, which means demand is low. So, in most cases, when supply is high and there's a lot of goods available, the demand for those goods is low because so much of the goods are available. They're easily accessible and easily available to buy, so not as many people are needing it. Alright, so now we're going to look at when supply is low, that means demand is what? So this would mean that the goods, there's not a lot of goods available. Like right now, there's not a lot of toilet paper available out there for us to buy as consumers. So that means that demand is, I'll give you a few seconds, high. Right. So supply is low, demand is high. Alright, so now since we went over what supply and demand is, we've connected it to the real world situations, and we've talked about what happens when supply is low, what that means for demand, and when supply is high, what that means for demand. So now I'm going to read off some realistic situations, and you're going to tell me if it's high supply, low demand, or if it's low supply, high demand. Alright, so I'm going to hold up two index cards. One says low supply, high demand, and one says high supply, low demand. And so you're going to choose between the two of these when I read out a situation. And I'm going to give you a few seconds after I read the situation. And you at home can say your answer, and then I'm going to give the correct answer afterwards. So, I'm going to read off my screen. At recess, a lot of kids have to wait for a turn on the swings. What is the supply and demand of the swings? Is it low supply, high demand, or high supply, low demand? The answer would be low supply, high demand, because the kids are having to wait for a turn, so that means that the demand is high, and the supply, there's not enough swings for everybody, so the supply is low. So that's that one. We'll do your teacher has 3 computers and 20 students who want to use them. What is the supply and demand of the computers? High supply, low demand, or low supply, high demand? It would be low supply, high demand. So just like the last one, there's only 3 computers, so that's a low supply of computers. And 20 students want to use them, so that's a high demand for the computers. So what about when new phones come out? Like the new iPhone, for example. Everybody wants the new iPhone, but what about the older versions of the iPhone? Would that be high supply, low demand, or low supply, high demand? It would be high supply, low demand. Everybody would be out buying the new iPhones, not the old ones, so there would be a high supply of the older phones and a low demand for those older phones. If you turned it around and did it for the newer iPhones, it would be a low supply, high demand, because everybody's out buying the new iPhones, so there's a low supply of them and a high demand for them because everybody wants them. So those are just a few examples of some situations where you would have low supply, high demand, or high supply, low demand. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned some more about supply and demand and how you can connect it to real world situations. Thank you for watching.